Check this out. I know you have always dreamed of performing in Carnegie Hall, so I think this 2023 to 2024 season at Sound Espressivo will be perfect for you. As a platform, we host live online auditions so you can share your music with the entire world. Then we send you to incredible in-person venues like Carnegie Hall so you can perform solo, as a duo, as an ensemble, and with orchestra. This year we have a total of 4 gala events at Carnegie Hall, as well as 4 different opportunities to perform with orchestras in the US, in the Czech Republic, and even in Egypt. We want to help you fulfill your musical dreams. Go to soundespressivocompetition.com to check out our season and to apply.
What a lovely bunch we have here.
It's been a long day for everyone, I think already. Actually, I'm really so happy that we have this guest today. I heard Julio play in Buffalo on Friday night with the orchestra, a wonderful concert. And I don't know how many of you were able to see the concert yesterday, but I'm sure it was just as good or even better. When I first met you Friday, I thought, oh my gosh, you look so great for studying with Agustín Barrios, and you're, you know, for what, you're 100 now? I mean, it's
125.
Great for your age, man. That's all I can say.
But I stayed at the Best Western last night, so I feel
So, here is the background of our guest. Julio Reyes started his musical training on the classical guitar at the age of 5 with his father, a musical diplomat from Paraguay, and a former student of a protege of Agustín Barrios. By the time he was 18, not Barrios, but Julio, he learned the cello, electric bass, and conducting. He was appointed assistant conductor of the Oakland Symphony Youth Orchestra to a young Kent Nagano at age 19. He gave his recital debut at the age of 12, placed 4th in an international Agustín Barrios competition in Mexico City at age 13, and gave a 3-week concert tour of Paraguay the following year. He performed Rodrigo's Concierto de Aranjuez with Calvin Simmons and the Oakland Symphony Orchestra as a senior in high school. He's given recitals. I mean, you were really an underachiever all the way through your early years.
get it together.
He's given recitals in the U.S., Paraguay, and Cuba. He made his Carnegie Hall debut last February as a winner in the Progressive Musicians Competition, which is why he was in Western New York this weekend. He has conducted youth and adult orchestras in the U.S., Paraguay, and Cuba. He conducted Prince Albert of Monaco's private orchestra in the opera Fay Yen Fah at the Monaco Opera in 2010, and has also conducted the Manaus Symphony of Brazil and the Dubrovnik Symphony in Croatia. I love Croatia. The High School of the Arts Orchestra in Havana, Cuba, and members of the Vienna Philharmonic in an all-Mozart concert in Salzburg, Austria, where Mozart was once the court composer. Name dropper. Really? Yeah. Okay. As an educator, he has given many lectures and master classes on the life and music of Agustín Barrios at various conservatories and music colleges and guitar societies in the U.S. and Paraguay. Currently works for the Education Department of the Santa Rosa Symphony, teaches guitar privately, freelance conducts, and continues giving lecture master classes. Basically, just sitting on your laurels, right?
Pretty much watching TV.
So, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it. So you are all guitar students, huh? Right. Ah, that's great. I went to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music back in 1983. And 700 students in the whole conservatory. At one point, they had 40 guitar students in the guitar department. Yeah. Then after COVID, they went down to 14. So they're starting to build it back up. But we had some great teachers. Sergio Assad was one of our teachers. Bogdanovich was one of our teachers. David Tannenbaum, great classical guitarist. If you are into Scarlatti, I suggest you look up his book, David Tannenbaum, on Scarlatti. He did a really good job on it. So today, what I'm going to be speaking to you about is Agustín Barrios. He's very dear to me. My father studied with a student of Agustín Barrios. So I've been playing his music since I was an amoeba. And it was back in the day when Barrios wasn't known. This was before Richard Buckley, Richard Stover actually did all his research. So when I was a little kid, Richard came to our house and basically debriefed my father on who is this guy Barrios. So thanks to Richard and John Williams, Barrios is now known. Unfortunately, Segovia did not like Barrios. Andre Segovia wanted to bring the guitar out, right, from the cantinas and make it a very respectable instrument, like the violin and the piano, and have it come to the concert halls and be respected, right? But Barrios, he was writing folk music. And so Segovia didn't like that. And Segovia also knew that if Barrios ever made it to Europe, it was going to be his #1 competition. Barrios could improvise complete recitals. When he was traveling through Central America and South America, he would learn their indigenous rhythms. And then in that concert that night, he would improvise on that country's rhythms. And people were saying, wow, I didn't know we had a composer that wrote this stuff. Well, no, it's all him doing it on the spot. Segovia could not improvise. He was a great technician, and he did write some stuff. But Barrios, his way of playing and his approach to music was different from Segovia. So we're going to talk about that. Before we go on, we have to thank the big guy, John Williams. Like I said, before John Williams recorded that album, Barrios music, Barrios wasn't really respected that much. A lot of people that were Segovia devotees said, oh, I don't like Barrios. And it's not because they'd listened to Barrios' music and said, oh, I don't like that stuff. It's more like, well, if Segovia doesn't like it, I don't like it. When I was at the conservatory, there was a Segovia devotee, who I'm not going to mention, but he's at Pepperdine University, so you can look up. And I played El Último Tremo for a master class that he gave at the conservatory. After I finished playing it, his first comments were, that's a very trite piece by a very trite composer. Well, the head of the guitar department, George Sacolario, a Segovia alumna, he immediately jumped on the stage and knew that I was not going to be very happy with that comment. Oh, Julio, thank you so much. And he kind of escorted me off the stage because he knew that I was not very happy with his comment. Eventually, when Richard Stover wrote his book, now people were playing Barrios' music, which is great. There's a lot of depth to his music. It's a different approach you have to have when you're playing Barrios' music. You have to play from here, strictly from here. Here, it's not going to happen. You have to feel it in your soul the way you play his music. Some of his pieces, it takes years to command. It's kind of like playing the Bach Chaconne. It's not like, okay, I've been playing for 3 years, I think I'll play the Bach Chaconne. No, you can start working on it, but it's going to take a few years until you master the Chaconne with all the Bach nuances that you need to have. So, one of the comments that John Williams had said was, as a guitarist composer, Barrios is the best of the lot, regardless of the era. His music is better formed, it's more poetic, it's more everything, and it's more of all those things in a timeless way. So, today we're going to talk about a brief bio of Barrios, his education, influential people, musical styles, his mental status, religious beliefs, and I'm going to do a background talk on La Catedral, Julia Florida, and El Último Tremo. So, he was born in San Juan Bautista, which is in the southern part of Paraguay. I've been to this place many a time. A lot of Paraguay, the majority of the people live in Asunción, and some of the cities around it. But once you leave there, it is a lot more barren. Now, this is more of a current shot. There's a lot more stuff there. But when I started going to Paraguay when I was 7 years old, I used to go there every summer, visit tons of cousins in Asunción, and spend time with other Paraguayan guitarists that knew a lot about Barrios. And when I went to this area, there were just a few places there in this city, and the rest was just barren. So, this is his home, and he had that corner area. Let's see. So, he was taught to read by the Jesuit priests, went to the Instituto Nacional, a high school for the performing arts, but he dropped out. He learned the rasgueados from watching his father and uncles play. He was a talented artist in caricatures and calligraphy. When he would go and stay at people's homes, because he never stayed in a hotel, he always stayed in people's homes. For the impresario, the person that was giving him his gigs, would say, okay, you can stay over here, or at this place over here, and we'll provide you a housekeeper. And he would stay there for months on end and use that as his hub and go to cities all around there for a while giving concerts. But he would always stay in that one place. So, his first recital was at age 18 as a result of somebody else getting sick. So this is an example of his artwork. Pencil drawing. And he did a lot of these. When he would stay at people's homes, he would write out some music and present it to the people of the home. And then on the margins of the music, he would do caricatures of the people of the family. Those pieces of music are what Richard Stover found when he was going all through South America and Central America, and that's what he published. So, influential people. Gloria Salan was his wife. She was from Brazil. She traveled with Barrios through most of his concert life. Lived with Barrios at the Pension in El Salvador. This pension was provided to him by the president of El Salvador, Maximiliano. He loved Barrios to the point where he provided Barrios with his own personal doctor, provided him with a pension for him to stay at, where all the residents were students of his. So they had their teacher right there. And we'll go more into what Gloria was all about. After Barrios' death, she married a coffee baron. The last 6 months of Barrios' life, he wasn't the healthiest guy. He was okay, but he wasn't that healthy. He was still he was starting to get a little on the frail side. He was still doing a lot of gymnastics as much as he could. When he was a child, he and his siblings formed a circus. And he was the one that played the glass organ by just filling glasses with water, different amounts of water, spinning his finger around, and that's what he did. He was also the one that did all the gymnastics in the circus, and he maintained that all through his life until the very end. This is his teacher, Gustavo Sosa Escalda. He was a friend of Hector, his older brother, and he convinced the parents to send him to the Instituto Nacional, which is kind of like a high school for the performing arts in Asunción. Barrios' only guitar teacher. This is Martin Borda y Pagola, or Pagolita, as he would call him. He was a cattle rancher from Uruguay. He was his financial supporter for many years and was also an emotional stabilizer. There was one time where Barrios was traveling and he was staying at this family's home for a long time. And Barrios didn't have any money. He was really bad business-wise. And so he wanted to repay them. So he sent Pagolita a letter saying, "Oh, Pagolita, these people have been so good to me. I'd love to repay them. Could you send me a slaughtered pig for me to present to his family? And as usual, I will pay you in the regular manner," which means I probably won't pay you. So he helped them so much. There were many times where Barrios was either really happy and he was telling jokes, the life of the party, and then there were other times where he was extremely nervous for multiple reasons, and we'll go into that. So this is Tomas Salomone. He was a childhood friend of his. He was a diplomat, political diplomat, government diplomat in Paraguay. He was sent to settle an armistice, to arrange an armistice between Paraguay and Bolivia in the Chaco War. It's a war that my father fought in. And so when Tomas spoke to Barrios, Barrios had just finished giving a recital in Argentina right after Segovia was there. See, the whole scene for guitar was in Spain, and then when the whole fascism thing started, everything went to Buenos Aires. And so Segovia would spend a lot of time in Buenos Aires. He gave a recital like 2 weeks before Barrios did. Now, at that time, catgut strings was in fashion, and that's what Segovia used. Barrios didn't have catgut strings. He had steel strings. And so what he would do is he would get some rubber and have it sit on the saddle and put the string right over it to get rid of some of that twang from the guitar. So Segovia made a comment about his strings. We'll get into that. Dionisio Basualdo. This man is very special to me because he was a student of Barrios. He was also a tailor. He was the one that kept Barrios just dressed to the nines constantly. There's a very cool picture of Barrios having a picnic with a bunch of his friends on the beach. And he's still wearing a suit, slacks, dress shoes. I mean, he's dressed up, but everybody else is more casual. So he always wanted to maintain himself at a certain level of professionalism. This is Jose Candido Morales. He was one of the students at the Pension in El Salvador. He's considered one of the original Mangoreanos, who are students or descendants that have continued to push the name and music of Agustín Barrios Mangore. When I competed in that Barrios competition in Mexico City, he was one of the judges. And so my father knew him. And so they were just catching up every night, and I would just sit there on the side like with popcorn, just listening to all these stories about Barrios. So he was a great man, great player. And this is my dad. He was a musical diplomat in Paraguay. He was sent to El Salvador by President Stroessner of Paraguay to bring Barrios' body back to Paraguay.
Wow.
The government of El Salvador said, no, Barrios wanted to have a life in your country, and you guys rejected him. No, he's not going to go there. He's one of ours now. Years later, Stroessner sent somebody else to go and try to get Barrios' body back. And so what El Salvador said, tell you what, we'll make you a deal. We'll cut him in half. You guys can take whatever half you want, and we'll keep the other half. Paraguay said, no. You're not going to desecrate this body. Just hold on to him. So there's a big statue, monument at the cemetery where Barrios is buried. And that's my objective, is to go there one day. He was in the Paraguayan military for 14 years. He was like their Bob Hope. For those of you that remember this, Bob Hope was a comedian who entertained the troops during World War II, during Vietnam, and he would go to all these military bases and bring a bunch of movie stars, mainly women, to perform for these soldiers. So my dad did that. He would perform for all the officers, and since my dad didn't smoke, they would pay him off with these cookies that were hard to get a hold of. They were wrapped in cellophane, but only the officers could afford them. He would save all of those because my dad's job in the front line was pretty boring. They didn't have MASH units, like medical places right by the front line. So if you were mortally wounded, they would bring him to my father. He would take him up into the woods, prop him up against a tree, and take him out. Euthanize him. He did this for 5 years of that. Now, the way that he got out of having to euthanize any of his friends, he'd pull out some of those cookies. He'd call a soldier over, hey, here's some cookies. Go do this to this soldier. In those 5 years, he never euthanized any of his friends. And he never told me this. This story I found out from his second wife after he passed away. He made her promise that she wouldn't say anything to me about that until after he passed away. So that I was shocked. So this great picture of Martin, his brother, he would recite poetry as Barrios would play. He was, just like Barrios, a very emotional guy. He was also a heavy drinker. The way he died was pretty tragic. He was drunk, and in a fit of rage with his wife, he stabbed her. He thought he killed her. And so he went running out into the street, stabbing his own self as he's reciting a poem. And he died out in the middle of the street. The wife never died, she lived. So it's pretty tragic. So his emotional state. Like I said, he was smoking and pacing due to periodic financial instability and a lack of performances. He was worried about reviews after receiving a scathing one in Chile where they said, this man could barely be called a musician. Now what we know about Barrios, and they say that, he could be barely called a musician. His music doesn't even come to the level of what we know as guitar music. So that's pretty ruthless. He was living like a gypsy, going from one friend's or impresario's home to another constantly. He was dealing with negative comments regarding his strings. His depression, he was blackballed in Paraguay. There was one time where he was going to be giving a concert that was going to be a benefit concert for this choir. When the guy who runs the concert hall found out it was Barrios that was going to play, he said, oh, no, he can't play, you guys can't come here. The reason that happened was because Barrios, he played for anybody. He didn't care. So he played for the government. So the government really loved him at that time. The government at that time was like very bad. Okay, it was basically a dictatorship. And so people thought that he was like this with the government. And so they blackballed him. Which, that's part of the reason why Barrios went through so many emotional things, because his own country disowned him in his eyes. Otherwise, he was very happy and jovial. He had a record contract in Argentina, which I think any of us would like to have. For 5 years, he had this contract where he was recording 5 albums a year for 5 years. Now, this was back in the day when you only had 2 or 3 minutes to record a piece, and it was only on one side of an album. That affected the way that he played. So he had to play things even faster or cut things off. Now, I was talking to him earlier about how that has affected the way that his music is played. Many people listen to these old recordings that Richard Stover cleaned up and put out as a CD. So guitarists hear Julia Florida, other pieces, and they use the tempos from that CD. But that's all wrong. Barrios himself said towards the end, I want to re-record all my albums now that we have the technology where I can play as long as I want. He wanted to do them with the correct tempos, but he died before he had a chance. So a lot of guitarists hear those CDs and use that as the basis, but you can't do that. You have to find out what the backstory is on a lot of his music, and that is what's going to give you the idea of how you interpret his music. We'll go more into that. So he had signed a contract to record 24 pieces over 4 months for Audion Industries. He was drinking yerba mate with his male friends and involved in peñas. Peñas are like jam sessions. So yerba mate is just, green tea. It's a very, for lack of a better way of putting it, a very sexist drink, because either all the men drink it together or all the women drink it together. They'd sit around, and one guy, whoever the host is, they had a wooden board with mate leaves inside, and they would drink it out of a metal straw that has like little holes on the bottom. So you'd fill it up, give it to your left, he'd drink it, and it goes all the way around. When you get to the last person before the host gets it, that person tells the host, okay, you need to put some more leaves over. It's okay. You can put some more water in there. It goes around. So it's a very sexist thing. Only the men do it together or the women do it together. To this day, it's like that. Unless you're a married couple, then you do it together. But if that's the case, you do it in private. So Paraguay is still very sexist. Back in the late 1800s, there was a big war in Paraguay. It was Paraguay against Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. It was a triple alliance war. At that time, Paraguay was a third bigger than what it is now. They killed off most of the male population till after the war, there was like 12 or so women per man. So what would happen is these women would get together, they'd get a guy who was either a senior citizen or really young, and they would tie him to a tree. And he would have to be their boy toy, shall we say. He had to be the one to work the farm, to work the house. And if he tried to escape, they would hobble him. They'd cut off part of his foot. To this day, if you get on a bus that's fully crowded and a senior citizen couple gets on, the first seat that's available goes to the man. The woman has to stand. Now, a man could have as many concubines and women on the side if he's married, and nobody could care less. A woman even looks at another man and says hello, she will be called a slut. When my dad passed away, I went down there to settle his affairs, and I stayed with his wife. One day we were going outside of her house to go for a walk, hang out. A neighbor across the street called her, pardon my French, said, "Oye, puta, ¿qué haces?" "Hello, B, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, this is my stepson." "It doesn't matter. Your husband just died and you have another man in your house." It didn't matter that I was her stepson.
Wow.
She was still thought of, I'll say it, she was thought of as a bitch. And she got a lot of, bad rep for that. I had to stay out of there. I had to leave and go stay with cousins so she wouldn't get a bad reputation. So they're pretty badly established still. So this is when he went from Barrios to Sugamangure. Now, what happened was he wanted to differentiate himself from everybody else who was a guitar player. And so he felt that, okay, I'm going to dress up basically in drag. I'm going to wear an Indian outfit, and he had a friend in Argentina years ago that was an actor, and he taught him a lot about theatrics and makeup and so forth. So he took on this persona of Cacique Nitsuga Mangure. Cacique means chief in Spanish. Nitsuga is Agustin, spelled backwards. And Mangure was an old Indian chief in Paraguay years ago, kind of like a Shaka Zulu. He was a warrior, a very important, strong man. So what he would do is he would set up his stage with fake trees, fake toucans. He'd dress like that, walk out on stage, and build himself as the Paganini from the jungles of Paraguay. As soon as he walked out on stage, people would start laughing because they'd never seen anything like this. But as soon as he started playing, their jaws dropped in standing ovations. So that guy, Salomone, that took him to Europe, he's the one that finally said when he came back from Europe, get rid of this Indian thing. Just wear a tux, wear some tails. And that's what he ended up doing later on. So. He also had some plastic surgery. You can see his lips right there, pretty thin compared to what he initially had. Now, he had this done like in 1928, 29. Plastic surgery in 1929. He's lucky he looks as good as he does. So, it was a very big thing that he did that. But he had very Hispanic, almost Indian features, and he made himself look even more Indian this way, which I never understood. So his musical styles, he had two styles. Richard Stover liked to say he had three styles: imitative, folk, and religious. Well, none of Barrios' music is connected to any scripture, so you can't really call it he had religious music. He wrote in the style, and he was very much motivated by religious music. He composed a lot of things when he was sitting in church. Matter of fact, what is now the second movement of La Catedral, he wrote while sitting in church. He had imitated pieces, like I said, in the style of Strauss, Bach. He was a big lover of Chopin and Bach. And he also wrote folk music, like I said, the thing that really upset Segovia. Paraguayan polkas, and music in the style from Ibero-America. Meaning, he would go through South America, like I said before, listen to their indigenous rhythms, and just write stuff. So his religious belief, he was into theosophy. Theosophy is basically the belief that everything around us is made by God, and so we need to respect it. His belief was that music was the most sincerest form of communication, therefore you can't play it the same way every time. It's kind of like having the same conversation and saying the same sentences every single time. That's why there are multiple versions of Danza Paraguay, Julia Florida, all these different pieces. There are multiple versions because he would have the basic blueprint for the piece, but he would add a few notes, do a different chord and a different key, or add things. You know, he never did the same pieces the same way. And for that matter, he only published 10 pieces himself personally. And the only reason he did that was because his buddy Pacolita one time said, "Hey, you're in the area, why don't you come stay with me? You're not going to be playing for a few weeks. Yeah, come hang out with me at the farm." When he gets there, he says, "Oh, hey, this is your room. I already put your suitcases in there. Yeah, go on in." As soon as he went in there, Pacolita shut the door and locked him in there. You can't get out until you write out at least 10 of your pieces. Those 10 are the ones that Barrios personally published. Later on, there was a guy in Brazil who published the very first album, a book of Barrios' music. And my dad has that copy. It's all torn apart. I still have that. So, now, let's get to his music. La Catedral. There are 3 movements. The second and third movement were written 19 years before what is now the first movement. One day he came up with that, what is now the first movement, and his wife, quote unquote, because they were never officially married until the very end of his life, or close to the end of his life, she said, "Hey, you know, I really like that tune. Why don't you add it to those other 2 movements?" The reason he liked her and kept her around was because she knew nothing about music. This was the only time that she ever gave him a suggestion. So he felt, okay, yeah, she can hang, because she's never going to tell me, no, you should do this measure like this. No, that doesn't sound good. She didn't know anything about music. But she did tell him, hey, you know, I like that first movement, add it to these 2, and that's what he did. 19 years after he wrote the second and third. So, the plausible mindset while writing the first movement. He was depressed over bad reviews in Argentina and Montevideo. He was longing to be able to go back to Paraguay. He was concerned about money matters as a result of a lack of performances due to being blackballed. And he was insecure due to quasi-nomadic lifestyle. Like I told you, he never stayed at a hotel. He always just traveled and stayed in empresarios' homes. For a long time he did this. And he was hurt by Segovia's comments about his guitar. Now, like I told you, Segovia had given a concert in Buenos Aires before Barrios did. Like I said, Segovia had gut strings. Barrios had steel strings. There's a coffee shop in Buenos Aires that a lot of guitarists would go and hang out, talk shop, compare nail files. And it's true, when I was at the conservatory, we used to sit out, all 14 of us used to sit in the lounge room with ping pong balls, scissors, different sheets of sandpaper, and we were just doing our nails, a bunch of guys doing our nails. And so people would walk by like, who are those guys? Oh, that's just the guitar part. So, at this coffee shop, Sain de la Masa, the guy who the Rodrigo piece, Aranjuez, was dedicated to, he was talking to Andre Segovia in front of this kiosk at this coffee place. And he asked Segovia, Maestro, you've heard Agustin Barrios, what do you think of his playing? His response was, I wouldn't know the first thing to do with that chicken wire. What they didn't realize, Barrios was standing on the other side of the keys. He hightailed it out of there and was massively depressed. He was very hurt. He regarded Segovia as, this is like Mount Rushmore. This is the guy we need to copy. He loved him. He adored. He was like, I'm not worthy, that sort of thing. So for him to hear this from the guy that he really admired, it was like stabbing him in the heart. He was very hurt by this. And those guys had met. There was a mutual friend of theirs in Argentina who brought Barrios over to Segovia's hotel. Segovia knew who Barrios was, but he didn't let him. He handed Barrios his guitar. He said, here, play me some pieces. And he basically was being, as a respect to their mutual friend, he said, oh yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice. All of a sudden, he played the last movement of La Catedral. And Segovia, who was also a big, big Bach devotee, said, oh my God, I need to have a copy of that. So he asked him for it. He calls up Paguelita, sends him a telegram, and says, you got to send me a copy of La Catedral. I got to give it to Segovia. The great Segovia is asking for my music. It was all BS. Segovia just wanted a copy of that so he could analyze it and see what makes this guy tick. What's so special about Barrios? When he got back to Europe, people heard that Segovia had met Barrios. And they asked him, Maestro, what do you think of this great Paraguayan performer? He said, he's barely a guitar player, much less a composer. And from then on, it's like Barrios' name in Europe was nothing. Like I said, if Barrios would have made it to Europe, he did go to Europe, but unfortunately, it was right at the time when fascism was starting. So he was in Germany. Imagine this. He's wearing a long black cape with red lining, right? And he's walking around with a very dark-skinned Brazilian mulatto woman. He was getting grief left and right. He performed on the radio, and loosely translated, after he performed there, the director, the guy who runs the whole radio station, says, we will never play this man's music again. This is, loosely translated, this is N-word music. We're never going to play his music again. Barrios, again, he was hurt. So they said, the heck with you guys, we're out. So Europe was not very friendly then. Now, Barrios, like I said, was a big lover of Bach, especially the cello. He loved the cello suites. So the beginning of the first, well, the whole idea of the first movement of La Catedral is associated with the first Bach cello suite. So here we have the first line of La Catedral. Here's the first line of the first cello suite. So what he did was, he got the first cello suite and flipped it over. And just like Bach, he would use two measures and compose a whole piece based on the rhythms, elongate it, or do it backwards, flip it over. Bach would just mess with two measures and create inventions, all these pieces. On that first movement of La Catedral, that's what Barrios did. Barrios really showed where his mental state was in that first movement. So, the way he did it was, in La Catedral, in that first movement, he repeats a lot of things. So, you have... So, you see, notice he repeats the melody. He repeats those notes. There's only like maybe 10 or 11 different notes in that A section. And so what he's saying is, I'm feeling depression. I feel pain. And he's just striking it at home like, oh, I feel pain. Oh, this is terrible. People don't like my strings. My inland country doesn't want me. Segovia thinks I suck, you know? So he was just showing that in his music by just laying in on those notes. Now, there are other guitarists that say, oh, that's a Bolivian or some Uruguayan rhythm, so that's the way it's supposed to be played. And on the CD, the Barrios playing, you hear this. So that's why the way a lot of guitar players play it. Because he had only 2 or 3 minutes to play a piece. And that's a long piece. So, but you can't write it, you can't play it that way. Once you know the backstory of where his mental state was when he wrote that, then you know how to play it. Like Julio Florida, another piece that has been wrongly misunderstood, badly misunderstood. So, the second movement is an andante religioso. It was written in Montevideo in Uruguay in early 1921. In measures 3 through 6, he imitates the harmonic structure of Bach's cantata number 12, O Sacred Head Now Wounded, from the St. Matthew Passion. Barrios emulates the Passacaglia bass line from the old Renaissance lament motif, which consists of half-step progressions, either up or down. So, we play that. Now, he wrote this piece while he was sitting in church. And so the way that he thought of that movement was, it's supposed to represent the students, people walking into church. Now notice it's not a French type of thing. It's not. No. This whole movement is supposed to be very pensive, very gentle. So you can feel, the anguish, the pain that he's going through in this piece. So, the third movement, it's also written in Montevideo in 21. It's a toccata-style, fast-paced movement that demands the highest amount of focus, agility, and technical prowess. It was this movement that caught the attention of Andres Segovia. Segovia never played. He asked for the piece of music, but like I said, just to analyze it, to see what Barrios was thinking, but he never played it. He uses a modified version of the Renaissance lament bass line by going down in scale form. Now, I was going to play this. However, there is a Bach Society in Paraguay. The leader is the conductor of the symphony, Asunción. He plays this arrangement. It was written in 1938 while in Costa Rica, named after Julia Martinez, the niece of his friend impresario Francisco Salazar. Nicknamed Julia Florida. Florida means blossomed. And let's see, she was the housekeeper and eventually the student. Later on became more than a student. Richard Stover tracked her down and asked her, what do you remember about Barrios? Oh, my boyfriend. She evidently died in her 80s. She got hit by a bus. So, now, the thing about Julia Florida, and I'll end with this one. Can I play the piece?
Yeah, maybe no repeats or something?
Oh, yeah.
We're going to hear it in the master class.
Okay,
so.
okay. I'll play just a beginning part of it, just to give you an idea. Like I said, Barrios recorded this piece, and the way he did it, because he only had 2 minutes to play the whole piece. But the thing is, this is a love song, a forbidden love song. So you can't play it like this. It's called La Barcarola, the boat girl, but it's a story about a true love. That's the vibe you're supposed to have with Julio Florida. That is saying, I love you, but I can't be with you. So, you know, at the very end where there's a harmonics going up, that's his way of saying, I'm letting you go. Goodbye. And so when he recaps it, at the very beginning, he's saying, oh, this is Julio Florida, I really like her. When he goes into the minor section, he's trying to figure out, how can I make this work between both of them? I can have Julio on the side, and I can have Gloria. It's a real womanizer. And then later on, he realizes, no, Gloria, she's my true love. And so when you hear the melody come back, it's him acknowledging, yes, Julio Florida, you are an amazing woman, but I have to let you go. That's why you hear those harmonics going on. Okay. So, can we have time for questions, or should we go over to the other
We should move, and we can do questions.
Okay, let's do that.
Because this needs to be a transition.
At Carnegie Hall, our new season of auditions for classical musicians is now available. Performance opportunities for students, young professionals, and seasoned artists. Perform as a soloist or chamber ensemble at Carnegie Hall. Perform a concerto with the New York Chamber Players at Carnegie Hall. Composers submit their works to be premiered at Carnegie Hall. New this season, laureate ensembles at Carnegie Hall. Audition to be part of a 3-day intensive workshop directed by some of the world's master musicians, culminating with a performance at Carnegie Hall. Audition live from the comfort of your own home. Get live evaluations from expert judges and expand your online presence through our international internet broadcasts. Additional award and performance opportunities are also available. Visit our website for full details. Don't miss out on these wonderful opportunities to advance as a musician and perform on a world-renowned stage. We look forward to hearing your performances.